Hi guys, what's going on? What's poppin'? I did not want to record this film originally because I felt as though I'm not ready to yet, but this is the video and this is where I've been the past few months.
It's not just good by our terms.
Is that all they have?
Yeah.
Or do they have still? The kitties bump.
Lighting just makes me happy.
The end of a very eventful weekend.
They're talking about green card. All right, so there are three major categories I wanted to cover in this video. One being my career, and then the wedding, and then I'll talk about heartbreaks that I experienced last year. I know in a year where you're getting married, you're experiencing heartbreak. That's crazy. Anyways, last year, unfortunately, your girl lost her job twice, okay? Once in the beginning of the year, and the second time was like 2 months before the wedding. And for those who don't know, like, I'm in IT. I am a business analyst. So in this kind of like IT contracting world, oftentimes like that job security is a big thing that I think that a lot of people don't talk about. Contracts end, contracts move, whether maybe you're based in the DMV today, tomorrow you're gonna be based in like Alabama or like Texas or whatever. Oftentimes, if you're not developing something, they do not see you as a major asset unless you have the grace of the Lord over your life. Okay, or you're very knowledgeable. First lesson I wanted to share is that you need to guard your heart. Everybody talks about imposter syndrome, and it is real. Imposter syndrome from work, especially, just because you may have had a few bad experiences at one location or at under one contract, doesn't mean that you are a bad person or you're bad at what you do. People could have a different vendetta against you, unfortunately. Sometimes there's clique culture. I personally am not somebody who naturally adapts to clique culture very well. Losing a job, like, it was really easy for me to think, oh my God, I suck at what I do. Maybe this is not the path for me. This isn't the third. But I had to learn real quick how to learn from those bad experiences. Learn what I can from them, but don't let that be a scar to who I am as a person. One of the biggest lessons I learned is, how can I become an asset wherever I go? What do I need to know? You know, if I'm doing an admin role and they're using different softwares, I have to do my research on the side about those different softwares. How can I get my team closer and closer to where it needs to be? The scripture that comes to mind is Proverbs 4:23, where it says, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. If you hear like managers who don't necessarily have your best interest at heart, you know, you might hear certain critiques that don't align, or you just might have certain, like, you might have this experience happen to you back to back and you're thinking, oh, I must suck as a person. That's not you guarding your heart. Guarding your heart means, okay, these experiences are two separate experiences. What can I learn from these separate experiences? It's just your job. You only owe them like 9 to 5. Outside of that, there's more to you as a person. That's that. The second thing I learned was that lean into what God is trying to tell you in this season. This kind of reminds me of Matthew 6:33. Beautiful scripture to quote up and down, but I think there's something that the Lord made me realize. Seek ye first the kingdom and its righteousness. That being said, being right with God doesn't mean to just go to him because you need something, or go to him to thank him for something, but go to him because you want to seek him. You care about him. You care about his responses to things. Most of the issues we find ourselves in, if we study the life of Jesus Christ, we might know the answer to why those things happen. You have a deeper level of insight. That leads me to my final point in this category of career. God is your source. Your money is not your source. Your job is not your source. Your skills, whatever, is not your source. Because here's the thing about that. You can lose all of that and God is still number one and he's still always present. So that reminds me of Matthew 6:19-21. And in this, I'll just kind of summarize it. Essentially, it talks about wherever your heart is, that's where your treasure lies, right? Or wherever your treasure lies, that's where your heart is. And it talks about how, why would you store your treasures here on earth where it could decay when you can store your treasures in heaven? One of the things I learned in the midst of me losing my job was that, you know, I'm planning my wedding. I'm thinking, okay, we have good jobs. We can both cover these and we can cover that. Allocating where these future paychecks will come in. And then all of that ends and ceases, and now you're like, dang, what am I gonna do? It then made me go back to the origin of where I needed to start praying more than I was paying off these people. This marriage stuff is cute to plan. It's cute to do all these cutesy wedding things, but prayer is the key. And I realized that I was doing a lot of wedding planning and not enough of like actual praying, because even if I wanted to pray like marriage plan, it's not going to be the same. I believe that everything happens for a reason, especially as a believer. So with all that planning and doing all these extra things, God needs to be your source and your foundation, going back to seeking him first, or like seeking being right with him first. Praise report. So after everything, literally, just so y'all know how God works, 2 days before my traditional wedding, the Lord granted me a new job where it literally was everything that I was praying for and then some, where I feel always needed. Like I always have something to do. I love my job so much that I'd be forgetting to take breaks. That's that as far as career is concerned. Now, as y'all know, I was talking to y'all about wedding planning, okay, and how, yeah, that was another thing on my mind last year. Wedding planning wasn't all glitz and glam. One of the first lessons I learned last year with wedding planning was that you can never plan too early. I remember I saw a tweet one day when somebody said, I'm not that girl who plans their wedding on Pinterest and all that stuff. Like, I'm just here for the vibe. Okay, you vibe on. And when it's time for you to pick out colors and you don't know where to start. Okay, anyways, but they were trying to clown girlies like me, but I'm here to say that shout out to my Pinterest board and my planner, because those two went hand in hand, okay? Shout out to Signature LA Events, and that's one bird. Lou and her team, they're lit. So yeah, you can't plan this wedding stuff by yourself. It's better to start early, get a planner, get someone to help you plan your wedding so that you get the better rates, and so that you have someone looking at the areas where you might be missing, because there's always something. There's minor details that go into wedding planning that a lot of people do not pay attention to. The next thing I would say is you want to trust the relationship you have with God. And if not, you'll find yourself making decisions you weren't necessarily ready for. Oftentimes we have a lot of decisions that we have to make, and then we do a lot of prayer that goes into it. Maybe you're praying about your bridal party, you're praying about your vendors, you're praying about your spouse, and you're like, okay, what do I do? The crazy thing about that, and I think this applies to anybody that's wedding planning, or you're single and you're just watching this for the vibes of it, and you love me so much you just want to watch my video. I love you too, thanks sis. But you're lit. But my thing is just, this applies because God does speak. The problem is that we let the things that we see to negate what he is saying. God said no. And you're like, but this person's really nice. But God said no. Or maybe God didn't say anything. And you're like, well, maybe if you're saying nothing, that means something. So therefore, that's what it is. Maybe he's not saying anything because the answer is no. Or maybe he's not saying anything because you're not listening. And so, or you've already made up your mind. I think the reality of the matter is being honest with ourselves could take us a very far way in this life, but I do not want to digress. I'm gonna Control thoughts, control thoughts. Sometimes you gotta trust the relationship you got with God. You have to trust the word that you received with God and keep it pushing. The next thing that leads me to that is if you don't learn boundaries, you gonna end up learning it during your wedding process. Yeah, boundaries is very important. When I say boundaries, just little things like being able to say no. A lot of us think we can say no until the excuse is, this is my parents' first wedding and I just have to accommodate them because they've never experienced this before, neither have you. Boundaries is such a big thing that I've learned in the wedding planning process. You need to know what you like and what you dislike, because that is just a baseline of boundaries. If you don't like something, don't make time for it. Don't make room for it. So learn how to set boundaries now, as young as possible, or even if you're in the middle of planning a wedding, this is your warning sign to start saying no. Anyways, now I'm gonna go ahead and address one of the big kickers for me in 2024. Why I say setting boundaries is so important, okay? If you don't set boundaries, you're gonna open yourself up for heartbreak multiple times. And I think in a year where there was so much love and so much being, you know, a year full of love, you know, I'm getting engaged, I'm getting married, you know, it's all just a bunch of beautiful things happening. There were also unfortunate instances of heartbreak from different areas in my community. I mean, I don't think any relationship, whether if it's a boyfriend or a close friend or a family member or whatever that ends, you're gonna learn something from it, because if you don't learn something from an end of relationship, are you really paying attention? Anyways, but one of the biggest lessons that I learned in this season or at least of last year, I would say, was that there are friends for every season that you're in. I was talking to someone in my family and they had told me that there are louder relationships and they're like quieter relationships. And I love that concept of loud and quiet. Consider it like a volume scale kind of thing. The louder relationships are probably the ones that are more present. The quieter relationships are the ones that are not as present. Some have even gone mute, but they're never like just gone all the way. Now, it's not always us to decide who goes and who stays. I mean, you can, but I have lived my life to learn that the people who are supposed to leave will leave. And the people who are supposed to stay will stay. And you don't have to do too much. You just raise the volume and you lower the volume. I'm married now and I've never been somebody who believes in not having any, like cutting off all your single friends, no. But I do think that if your single friends don't align with where you're at and they're not willing to respect where you're at, then maybe that's a friendship that needs to be quieted down, right? And especially if they don't respect your partner, that's another thing. But I've never experienced that. There are friendships that fizzle out, maybe because of experiences, traumas, things that, you know, have happened throughout the course of your friendship. So unfortunately, I learned a really big load of that last year, which I really wish I didn't have to the same year I was getting married. But one of my friends always told me, like, there are statistics say that when you get married, you lose like 2 to 4 friends. It's okay, it is what it is. Like, you know, you gotta do what you gotta do. I had to learn that the hard way. I remember one of the greatest heartbreaks I experienced was like, you know, losing my best friend. Not off of any beef or anything of that nature, but just simply off of the fact that the like character differences, you know, like desires are different, values are different, you know, so you can't change for that person because who you are is who you are. And that leads me to my next point. Friends are supposed to amplify you and not modify you. The Lord taught me that you are who you are and you cannot change yourself constantly for people. People are either going to tell you, hey, this is something you need to work on, and be patient enough to watch you get through it. Or they'll be like, well, I don't really like this about you, and cut you off. You guys either align or you don't align. Your values match or your values don't match. That's just what it is. And that being said, one of the things that I am allowing myself to release herself from is the concept of prioritizing friendships. That season has gone. And now that like you're married, especially if you're about to get married and things, friendships can't be on the top of your list anymore because it does affect your marriage. Friendship has become an idol, at least for me, to the point that it was actually affecting a lot of my closer relationships. Once you start having an idol, God don't play with that, because now it's affecting his flow and his like connection to you. I believe that everything happens for a reason, and God had to remove certain relationships from me and remove certain access to certain people, because if I kept going, that route, it would have costed me other things. So that being said, deprioritizing your friendships is the wisest thing to do, because if it aligns, it will work out. And not every friendship heartbreak has to result in drama or beef or, you know, people hate each other. It doesn't have to be that way. You can actually just quiet down the friendship so that you can realign to God's initial purpose and plan for you. Your marriage is important and community is definitely important, but it needs to work together. Nothing should be fighting for attention. This is why we put God first. But yeah, so that's that with this video. I'm gonna be very transparent. I had a really hard time recording, so let's see what comes out of it. But nonetheless, I am thankful to the fact that I was able to learn so many of these lessons. But my hope is that you guys will be able to learn something from these experiences, and, you know, probably add your own, share your own insight, you know. So that being said, I want you to let me know, what is one lesson that you probably learned last year, or a lesson that you probably learned through this video that you would like to share down below. I want to start building a community on my YouTube channel where we can all learn from each other. I can learn from you and you can learn from me. But if you enjoyed this video, please do not forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more videos. I have more videos, so feel free to check them out, and I will see you guys in another video very, very soon. Bye, guys.